here's another thing that's come to my attention. Going back to the Freddie Gray thing, you seen the video where his supposed sister, twin sister, spoke to the media, and you hear her and she's saying something. She's saying that she's talking about her brother and how the parents don't want it, but parents don't want the violence. But you hear her and you're like, wait a minute, because she doesn't say my brother, right? She says Freddie Gray wouldn't want this. She doesn't say my mother and father. She says Freddie Gray's father and mother wouldn't want this. Now, if your brother just died, why would you put out his whole name? If my brother passed away, I'm gonna say his first name or his nickname, or something like that. And why would you say Freddie's father and mother? It doesn't sound like she's, it doesn't sound like she's genuine at all. And if you look at the video, she kind of has like this smirk on her face and things like that. It just doesn't seem right. Then, it's just not set up. And then it was like a whole 17 seconds. You know what I'm saying? You look at her body language. It's just she's too calm for her brother to have passed away. You wouldn't say your whole brother's name if your brother or your sister, anybody in your family just passed away. Doesn't seem right. And also in the background, the guy seems to be holding. There's a guy in I think to maybe the left of her or whatever. He's in the background, but he's holding a Masonic sign symbol, and the way he has his hands crossed, it's a Masonic sign, and that got me thinking about the Masonic rituals. It's not a coincidence that this whole Freddie Gray incident happened when it did. He was injured April 12th, and he died April 19th. And what was it? I think the riot started a week later, or something like that. April 25th. Boom. Here we go. So it got me thinking about the Masonic rituals of blood sacrifice. Now I know, to some it sounds, the Mason thing may sound crazy to you, but there's two. If you look at it, if you get into occult, dark occult Masonic rituals, they do blood sacrifices at the beginning of spring. And when you get into it and you start to look at significant dates in human history, you just start to scratch your head yet again. Like, wait a minute, you can't say it is coincidence. There's something up to the dates. The dates are very, very significant, and the blood sacrifice starts very, sometimes they start very early. Soon as spring starts, boom, you get something. And other times it happens later. And for some reason or another, April 19th and April 20th are the main dates where where the blood sacrifice starts or begins or whatever. For instance, the Civil War, April 12, 1861 started, right? And then there was Baltimore riots in 1861, and that started on April 19th, where 13 people were killed. Freddie Gray's death was April 19th. Freddie Gray was injured on the 12th of April. You have all these things, and that's too much of a coincidence to me. Like, for real. So I'm gonna play a little clip, and from Mark Passio. Mark Passio is he's a former Satanist. I think he was in the Church of Satan, and I listened to him a lot, and so he probably would explain it better than I would. But I'm gonna play a little clip.
very singular or unidimensional way of seeing Masonic symbolism and imagery, and this is largely propagated because Freemasonry has been co-opted and turned into something that is quite dark and not used for anything resembling its original intent or purpose, as I've said before. To continue on the season of sacrifice, what we need to understand about it is a time period which was traditionally about offering a sacrifice in the form of a blood sacrifice of animals or human beings to the sun and the earth at the beginning of the planting season of the year, or in other words, the first half of spring. If you look at the season of life, the 180-degree section of the zodiac at the top portion in the previous images I gave, you could break that down into 4 quarters. You have the 2 seasons, which, that's the quarter of the whole zodiac, spring and summer. But you each break those down into 2 components. So you have the midway points that separate those 2 seasons. The midpoint of Taurus, which is May 1st, Walpurgisnacht, and the midpoint of summer, which is August 1st, or Lammas Day. And that would therefore quarter that top portion of the zodiac, the top half, into 4 quarters. And the first quarter of that first season, or in other words, the first half of spring, okay, is the season of sacrifice. In other words, from the spring equinox to the midpoint of spring, the middle of Taurus, May 1st. And like I said, officially, if you really want to be technical about it, it is March 22nd, or 3 days after the beginning of spring, 3 days after the spring equinox, when the solar disk has fully emerged into the northern hemisphere until the midpoint of spring. Again, the reason for this is because this is planting season. And if the sun is your god that you're essentially worshiping as the giver of life on the earth in a physical sense, because that's what sustains life and grows crops that you're going to be dependent upon for life during the coming year, then you want to offer that God the sacrifice at the very point of his coming to power, which is the beginning of spring, specifically the first half of spring. So this is still done because the people who are this solar cult, who essentially came out of the ancient world and developed the systems of astrotheology and modern religion, are still in control. They still rule the world. And they are still practicing their rituals of sacrifice. And they do it in different ways now. They don't march people up a pyramid and carve their heart out with an obsidian blade. They don't tie someone down to a stone altar and, cut them open and let them bleed all over the stone anymore. They may do this in private rituals and ceremonies that they keep well hidden from the public, but in public, a different form of sacrifice takes place. And these are commonly known as, in today's parlance, false flag operations. They are psyops, psychological warfare operations, in the form of rituals. These are modern-day rituals of blood sacrifice that are conducted throughout the course of the year. And it's amazing if you really look at the patterns. And some people will say, oh, you're just seeing what you want, you're seeing the patterns you want, this is confirmation bias, etc., and so forth. And once again, I'll preface this by saying, hey, believe whatever you want. But nobody's going to tell me that all of these things don't amount to something that is larger than coincidence when I read you this list. Okay? Especially when you look at all the justifications that have followed these acts, and how many people have perished in these acts, and how long the media has gone on and on and on about them, and how politicians and control-based groups have all used these horrible, horrific circumstances as justifications to peddle forth draconian agendas. All right, nobody's going to tell me that's just coincidence that these all happened during this 40-day time period of the year. All right, so I'll read a short list. All right, and that's all I'm bringing this forward for people to keep in mind. You have to understand, this is a time period these psychopath lunatics love to trot out an event to get people in deep levels of fear and give up more of their rights. So now is the time period to be hyper-vigilant. I'm not saying anything's definitely going to happen. I'm saying it may very well occur during this 40-day period, which we are already in, which started on March 22nd, 1 week ago, and which progresses until May 1st, May Day. All right? So you really have to be on guard, be vigilant during this time. This is the time, if some event happens, it's almost guaranteed it's a false flag event, and it's done as a blood ritual, a bloodletting ritual, during the season of sacrifice. Okay? So let's look at some of the events that have occurred during this season. The battles of Lexington and Concord were actually initiated by the British Empire against America. The opening acts, the opening volleys of the First American Revolution, April 19th, 1775, the battles of Lexington and Concord. And folks, let me tell you something. They love April 19th and 20th. If there's a particular date they love, that's it. Especially April 19th and 20th. Especially April 20th. If I even had to say one particular date. They love those two dates. Okay? That time period is special for these psychopath dark occultists. Alright? I can't tell you exactly why it's around that date, but I know they love those two dates. And if there's any dates you want to watch and see that is an event going to be taking place on this date that is there to inject fear into the consciousness of humanity, it is April 19th and 20th. All right, above all other dates of the year. So April 19th, 1775, the British initiate the battles of Lexington and Concord. April 19th, once again, 1861, the Baltimore riots in Baltimore, Maryland.
So yeah, that was just a little clip of Mark Passio, and I remember he said that. That's an old clip, but I remember he said that about the blood sacrifice. And I think last year, I don't think anything significant happened last year. If it did, for some reason, I don't remember. But definitely this year, April 19th, and also what happened on April 19th. Charles Manson was sentenced to death. Mark Passio, he was also going to talk about the Waco, Texas burning. That was April 19th. Oklahoma City bombing, April 19th. April 19th, the Boston Marathon. So it's too much of a coincidence. And once again, you can look this up and see for yourself what was the significance of that date. For some reason they like to get things started on that date, but it's too much of a coincidence. So I thank you again for listening. I'm sorry for the long pause. My slow laptop. What can I say? I gotta get a new one. But I hope you got something out of it, and I thank you guys for listening. Talk to you next time.